and thanks for the opportunity to be able to represent the Guyana Office for Investment and the team with me here today in covering the subject doing business in Guyana. As said before, my name is Owen Borwe. I'm the CEO for the Guyana Office for Investment, and like some of you, I've lived in the diaspora for some time and decided to make a contribution back to Guyana. And I'm very happy with that decision to this day because I came to make a contribution. That was my sole goal and purpose. With me is Ms. Pradeep Bolanath, the Head of Planning and Development Division within the Guyana Forestry Commission, Mr. Newell Dennison, the Commissioner for the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, and Mr. Jerry Gavaya, the former Chair and current Chair of the Governance and Security Subcommittee within the Private Sector Commission. I will try to make a brief 10 minutes presentation on behalf of Go Invest and to some extent the doing business in Guyana basic principles that will assist you, and my colleagues will try to do the same. I think the VC covered the other points that we wanted to talk about. So if you can start for me, please, that'll be good. I'm hoping everyone can see here, or from the screens closer to you, that you can see what is here. So to start with, sorry, next slide please. This is just a brief overview of the presentation. It seems quite a lot, but I would like to cover it within 10 minutes. Just about the responsibilities and the services of Go Invest. Sorry, can I borrow the mic? I'm comfortable. Yes, just briefly about the responsibilities, services, some potentials in Guyana, priority sectors for investment. We'll touch a bit on the infrastructural development. I think Minister Patterson touched on quite a few of those areas yesterday. Bilateral agreements will be very important for you. The incentives that are available, the process for starting a business in Guyana, some of the information Go Invest would require if our assistance is required. And some brief notes on the processes for applying for fiscal incentives, applying for land, and other sources of information. So Go Invest, for some of you who are my age and older will know that it started in 1994, and it came out from the Department of Commerce, Trade and Commerce that existed before as a department. Primary focus is investment facilitation and investment promotion, export promotion. Those are the primary focus. To a lesser extent, policy advocacy is actually part of the responsibilities of Go Invest. And what I can say is that prior to my arrival a year and 2 months ago, that area has never had any real work done after 1994. It's something that we're trying to work on via what is called the Investment Promotion Council, which falls under the Ministry of Finance. It's a bit of a struggle to get it going, but we're working very hard to get there. Services offered by Go Invest. I think as Minister Gaskin mentioned to the event yesterday, there's no difference between how we treat a foreign, a local, or someone from the diaspora community. Everyone gets equal treatment. The assistance and the processing of applications for lands, we work together with the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission for any industrial or commercial lands, and in terms of agricultural lands, anything over 40 acres, those are processed and a recommendation is done from Go Invest office. Fiscal incentives, again, the recommendation comes from our office for everything that is non-extractive in nature. That means anything that is not mining or oil and gas We get directly involved in doing the assessment and recommendation related to that. Export assistance, we get even down to assisting in work permits and assisting with visa on arrival in Guyana. We work towards that. Inward and outward trade missions, and other technical information or technical advice. We try to provide that to investors. I'm still searching for a comfortable position. So on behalf of the investors, and some of you may have had the experience, or probably experiencing it right now, I'm happy to share this because it should assist you in avoiding these pitfalls or help you in managing that time and those processes more efficiently as you go forward. On behalf of anyone who comes to Go Invest, we try to assist you with most of these agencies, or all of these agencies, including those that are probably not listed here. So as you know, Guyana Revenue Authority is a must. You do have to register your business. You have to register for a tax information number, value added tax if your turnover is over $14 million per year. The Environmental Protection Agency, the Bureau of Statistics, the Guyana Forestry Commission, and all of those agencies. We work as the intermediary in trying to deal with those matters where we can. So, for example, if you were to apply to Go Invest for incentives for anything, one of the requirements is we ask for 3 copies of your documents and an application form which is signed. The reason for that is that it gives us the legal authority to forward your documents onto any one of the respective agencies and to try and assist you where necessary. Without that, we've got no authority to represent you or to share your information. Some of the significant potentials in Guyana. And you may have seen this before, but I just wanted to highlight for you who would, I don't know, or for some of you may have forgotten it. From a geographic perspective, the language perspective, natural resource, and a market access perspective, there are many, many advantages. We speak English. That's a very big plus for us being in the middle of the Caribbean and South America. Gold, diamond, bauxite, manganese, water, rare earth, and everything else that Ms. Dennison is going to mention afterwards. And while the gold prices might be a bit down right now, I can assure you that gold production is still going on, and gold will always be in demand because it's a store of value for individual corporations, individuals themselves, and companies. We heard a bit about the amount of land that is available in Guyana from Dr. Normain and his speech yesterday. And the arable land that is available, tremendous opportunities for over 200 fruits and vegetables that we can actually produce. Very important agreements. We've got about 15, and I think this is not being updated, we've got about 16 international trade agreements, preferential agreements, and bilateral agreements. That allows us access into markets without paying duties in some cases, and allows us access into markets with preferential qualities. I don't think many people know that if your agricultural products are produced in Guyana, you have duty-free access into the European Union market from Guyana. Last but not least, just some high-level number of what the market potential is. The $2 trillion purchasing power is not just the Guyana number, it's the Guyana number together with the markets that we have potential to export our produce to. That's what the total is estimated at. Again, from a geographic positioning perspective, we are to the right of my right here, or to the east. But in context of market, we've got the Caribbean market, we've got the South American market, and we've got the Brazilian market, which is not always mentioned, even though we have what is called a partial scope agreement to export to Brazil quite a lot that is produced in Guyana. Priority sectors for investing in Guyana, the agro-processing and agriculture. As you know, one of the top priority areas for government of Guyana is value added. and I think you may have heard these speeches many, many times before, that for the last 200 years plus, we've been producing rice, sugar, bauxite, gold, love, etc. And over 65 or over 68% of those produce leave Guyana in its unprocessed or natural form, with least amount of transformation done to the products. There's tremendous potential for the value-added sector. The light manufacturing is included in there. Services, tourism, energy, mining, forestry, information, communication, and technology. I can say from the services perspective, we have quite a few jobs in seats, or heads in seats, for the business process outsourcing sector. It's not just calls. It's processing your insurance claims. It's processing, for the calls, it's even processing your cars. When you call that number, sometimes if you're broken down in the tri-state area, if you drive for a few of the trucking companies out there are call centers in Guyana that process those calls to get the tow trucks or the mechanical services to those trucks. Right here. We've got about 3,500, and by the end of this year, probably 4,200 heads in seats for the call centers. And we are hoping that a deal with Visa is concluded by December, which could put another potential somewhere shy of 1,000 seats to process transactions related to Visa cards in Guyana. That will be big for us. In the Caribbean, on a comparative basis, that's very small. In Jamaica alone, we're looking at about 33,000 call center jobs, or jobs in business process outsourcing. One of the advantages there for us is because we're English speaking and we come under the Commonwealth the Commonwealth mechanism from a legal framework, we've got call centers that are interested in doing legal research in Guyana by first year and third year university students for law firms as far as Australia and New Zealand. So the business process outsourcing sector has potential that we need to look at it from the potential perspective. Infrastructural development, I think, don't want to spend a whole lot of time here, Minister Patterson touched on quite a few of these, but I'm just listing them here for you, and they're part of the presentation package that will be available for email distribution. But he talked about nearly every single project that I have listed here, and for that reason I don't want to go into details with them. Again, this is just the transport opportunities from the rehabilitation of the hinterland airports and the intermodal transportation linkages. I think if I can just remind one thing that he said, is that we've done many, many projects in the past, but the projects were done without a cohesive plan as to what is the purpose of each project as it interrelates to the transportation network that is being developed. The incentives that are available. The incentives comes as general incentives, special incentives, sector-specific incentives, and land. We consider land an incentive. And that's because the access to the amount of land available and the price, considering that those factors, it is classed as an incentive to an investor. So some of the other advantages that you may know of already, there's no foreign exchange controls in Guyana. You can take in and you can take out as much capital as you would like to, barring the regulatory restrictions that would be available to nearly every country where capital is moved. There's an unlimited carryover of tax losses from previous years. For those who are accountants, they know very well how that affects your balance sheet and how your shareholders will be happy with that. The accelerated depreciation of machinery and equipment, again, that's a very big tax benefit at the end of the year for your balance sheet. The benefits of double taxation treaties with the US, with Canada, with the CARICOM region, and as what I understand from the Guyana Revenue Authority, while we don't have a double taxation treaty with the US, I may be wrong here, but I'm going to go to the limit and say, I do remember hearing that some credit is afforded to various taxes that are paid in Guyana for filings of various companies in the US. It might be state specific because I think the examples were just from 2 specific states. But I don't want to go into detail on it. I prefer the tax accountants to cover that in more detail. You have the right to open and retain foreign currency in any commercial bank in Guyana. And in terms of the last item there, I think is just caught in this slide here, but it goes into the next slide. The general incentives that are available is what I just covered here. These are more the specific incentives, the tax holiday, the corporate income tax holiday that is available to pioneering projects. Projects that are significant in nature in terms of dollar value of investment, in terms of number of jobs created, in terms of the type of activity or manufacturing activity in nature that has never been done before in Guyana or in a specific region. Those are largely classed as pioneer projects and qualify for the corporate tax holiday. What the Ministry of Finance and the Guyana Revenue Authority has been considering recently in offering corporate tax holidays to businesses is to avoid exporting government of Guyana's taxes to a different jurisdiction. So let me try to explain that a bit more. In the past, there were a few companies that benefited from the corporate income tax holiday. But when they filed their taxes in their home jurisdiction, they were taxed on that income. It would have been better for government of Guyana to collect that taxes here and they don't have to pay it out there. So one of the tests that we look for now is to ensure that if a corporate income tax holiday is offered to a company for their operations in Guyana, that income will not be taxed in their jurisdiction of registration. If that is guaranteed, then the corporate income tax is granted. If that is not guaranteed, there are considerations that we will have to look at. There are incentives for a specific geographic region, again, as I mentioned earlier, Region 1, Region 7, Region 8, Region 9, and Region 10. Those are classed as economically and socially challenged locations, and obviously the incentives are offered to them. In addition to that, the export sector, those who are exporting, there's another incentive that comes very close to a corporate income tax holiday. Let me use the last example here as a best guide, because this is an export allowance on the income earned from exports. If 61% of your production, your total production is exported, 75% of your income from that export becomes tax deductible. Translated in the other terms, you're paying taxes on 25% of your income only. That's an incentive that can be considered very close to a corporate income tax holiday. The sector incentives, not going to go into very much detail of this. It's routine stuff that many people will get if you had something specific to come to me, but at a general overview level, what I'll say is for the agriculture and agribusiness sector is the exemptions or the waivers, not an exemption, is the waiver of the duties and the value-added taxes on a wide range of machinery and equipment, even processing equipment, a wide range of the agrochemicals that are needed for your industry, and even on the expenditure. There's a tax allowance in the expenditure incurred for any land development and cultivation processes. Again, that's a very big item that affects your bottom line in the balance sheet at end of year. Fishery sector, the incentives is to a large extent the same as I mentioned earlier, with the exception that there is no land to develop on there. But for those who are into aquaculture, which we've seen quite a lot interest in lately, that incentive is available for land development. Light manufacturing, again, to a very large extent, the Concessions on the importation of capital equipment and machinery is available. Most raw materials from manufacturing companies registered under the VAT Act and exporting at least 50% of their production. We tend to consider those very easily for an exemption on VAT. In addition to that, there is the exemption on a wide range of auxiliary plant and equipment, boilers, forklifts, scales, and all of those other items that are essential to manufacturing activities that are available to anyone investing in that sector. The vehicle aspect of it, industrial vehicles do qualify, and when it's manufacturing, that is often considered a plus. The mining sector, again, I don't want to go into much detail of this. I think Mr. Dennison is going to cover this area, but there are quite a few incentives, and it goes as far as the corporate income tax holiday and special arrangement on the royalties paid when it becomes large-scale mining operations. Information communication and technology, again, this is directly related to the services, in particular the BPO services. From all of the equipment, the construction equipment and machinery, the outfitting of the buildings, those are all entitled to import duties and taxes concession. And it goes as far as if you're operating in some unique locations and the job numbers are high enough or the capital investment is high enough, you will be entitled to, or you will qualify for, the corporate income tax holiday. Tourism, again, there are quite a lot of incentives there. I must add that for tourism to qualify in the coastal areas, you need to have a hotel or a facility with at least 30 rooms. For the non-coastal locations, anything in the hinterland, there is a number, but we tend to look at that more in a discussion manner. It's not a hard or rigid rule because of the location and the unique and the incentives of promoting ecotourism in Guyana. Again, for forestry and wood products, the incentives are largely as you would get in the agricultural sector. My colleague from the Guyana Forestry Commission will touch a lot on that one. The aviation sector, as you know, the aircrafts are already rated 0 for duty on importation. The VAT could be a very significant item, as my colleagues here are aware of. Government of Guyana has taken the position that the VAT on aircrafts will be exempt or will be waived on an individual application basis. Bilateral relations, this is just a very high level of what exists for agricultural and fishery, Barbados, Brazil, all of the other countries that you could see listed here. Those are very, very helpful to the people in the agricultural sector, and I'll give you one very example here. The tiger prawn, which is out of Vietnam, is an invasive species. But for you to import that into Guyana to do a prawn farm, some specific requirements are needed. But because we have a bilateral arrangement on that specific item with other countries already, it makes it very easy for you to actually import it. Without that, you would not be able to import it legally into Guyana. We do have air service and transportation bilateral arrangement. France, Kuwait, Brazil, and all of the others there. We have health-related bilateral arrangements, obviously with our major partner to the west, Brazil, and Venezuela. Maritime and border, again, we do have Brazil and Jamaica in there. Trade and investment, we have quite a few trade and investment bilateral agreements that exist currently. And we know that it works for investors once we speak with them. They're coming from their jurisdiction and they would have had discussions with their foreign ministries before coming to Guyana. They usually flag that to us. They're aware of it. They're aware of it because they're looking for the benefits as formal investors. Briefly, starting a business in Guyana. Obviously, for those who are not Guyanese, obtaining a work permit or a visa is a very big item. Even if you are a Guyanese, it's highly possible that one or two of your employees or your consultants will not be a Guyanese, and that process needs to be sorted. Registering the business, you do have two options. You can incorporate it legally, or you can just register a business name. It's often recommended that you incorporate the business for all of the other benefits with it. It takes about 5 to 7 days routinely. Under the law, only a lawyer can actually register a business for you. You have to register with the Guyana Revenue Authority for a tax identification number. If your business is going to turn over 14 million per year, Guyana dollars, you do need to register for value-added taxes. And last but not least, you need to register with the National Insurance Scheme for yourself and for your employees. So as a company, that needs to be registered too. What I've listed here is just some of the information required by GoInvest if you were to access incentives from government of Guyana. And as I mentioned already, 3 copies of anything that comes into us with signature is a must, the necessary letter. Quite a few of the other information is your regular stuff that you would have included in a business case. Again, it goes into here. What I will say is that one of the key things that government of Guyana, including Ministry of Finance in particular, is looking for now is evidence of technical and financial ability to deliver a project. We would have covered most of this in detail in the information before there, so I'm not going to go into this. It kind of gives you a timeline and a process chart of what are the major milestones or decisions to be made. Land, as I mentioned earlier, you've got government lands and you've got lands in the MMA area. This slide, once it's shared with you, will give you a general idea of the process of applying for land, the locations and the kind of timeline that you're looking for with land. The details behind this is largely the slide that we looked at before. Same information that we look for with someone who's applying for incentives. We're trying to use a lot of that for those who are applying for large acreage of lands. Again, this is Region 5, very similar to the item before. And that concludes my presentation. Just some of the agencies we would have had, or the companies we would have had interactions with before. And sources of information where you would want to go to the websites that you may want to visit to get additional information to all that I would have listed here. Thank you.
You know, I neglected to say before I introduce Mr. Warwick, we're really looking for 10 regular minutes, not Guyanese minutes, for presentation. So over to you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Chair, colleague panel, visitors all. I have 5 slides, so I just want to precede this by saying that the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission is a regulatory state agency for the mining sector. It's a frontline agency. As a result of that, our responsibilities sometimes straddle very many different aspects of the state's responsibilities. Notwithstanding, what my intention here is to do is to just give a snapshot as to what it is that we believe would be relevant for your confidence in investing in Guyana, and particularly in the mining sector. So I have a snapshot of the sector at this point in time, and you will see that 57 billion in 2016 is our contribution to the economy. Sure. I think I know exactly what Mr. Verwey did. Our value of output in 2016 was 198.8 billion. Our employment is approximately, and this is within the sector, is approximately 18,000 directly And we believe that if we extend that to relations, that would probably be in the vicinity of about 30,000. So almost everything in Guyana is affected by the mining sector. Contribution to GDP in 2016 was about 15%. We expect that to be the case this year approximately. Our contribution to the export earnings is 66%, 942 million US, so that's quite significant in terms of our foreign exchange contributions. Large-scale mining operations, we have 2 world-class gold mines, 2 world-class bauxite mines, and at any point in time, should the situation, the market situation change go north, I'm of the opinion that we can have at least 2 more gold mines of the world-class standing, and perhaps the manganese mine might be able to move into that domain. Medium and small-scale mining operations are usually for gold and diamonds, some precious stones, but not very much. And the medium and small-scale mining sector has been traditionally the major contributor to the production and the revenues for mining. This quarry stone, the quarry products, sand, stone, and loam. And relative to those figures that you see there, our target for 2017 is still on. We're just at about 85 to 90%, sorry, 95% of where our targets should be in relation to gold declarations. So why is Guyana an investment destination? Well, Mr. Verwey has said quite a bit, but I just want to point out that many of the persons who come to speak to us about investment always ask the first thing about our risk in terms of being a democracy and in terms of having political stability. And that landscape, I believe, is very important in anybody who's going to put millions and billions of dollars into the sector. In this speaking, I put a question mark because our relationships within the continent are relationships that are other than English speaking. So I believe that if we have an open mind, that we need to foster some kind of improvement in our relations with our neighbors, and that means we should have to overcome the language barrier that sometimes exists. We have a free market development that's been in place for many years, economic liberalization, and promotion of direct foreign investment. That can have its challenges, because when we talk about foreign direct investment, sometimes that does not necessarily translate to revenue in country. Long history of bauxite, gold, and diamond production, more than 100 years in any event for all of those products, and a geological environment and mineralized areas that holds a variety of minerals that are very useful and expensive, but require indeed technology to explore, technology to produce and develop, and of course the right kind of environment in the international markets to deal with it. Stable mining environment, stable legislation, security of tenure and property rights. 9 out of 10 persons who come to invest in mining are very keen to understand that having received a tenure, whether it's a claim or a mining permit, that tenure is secure. We have not yet reached a point where we've matured and we're able to translate that tenure into dollars and cents. This is one of the areas where I believe that Guyana needs to get out of the box and perhaps have some institution that can broker projects of these kinds. Usually an operator who comes into Guyana and invests would have to go and have his finances come off of the stock market, or at the smaller scales, finance it from relations or in his own pocket. So we need to have, in my opinion, some mechanism where having received quality land that you can assess and determine what prospectively can support, that that business can be financed from institutions and reduce some of the risk. And I'm not talking about mortgages. Real GDP growth of approximately 3% over the last several years. So you're coming into an environment where already the economy is fairly vibrant as opposed to an economy that's bedraggled. And the result of that is that there is some confidence in making your investment. And we're already a destination for Canadian, US, Australian, European, and Asian ventures. So if you use the herd mentality, then you wouldn't be alone coming into Guyana, for mining at least. Some fiscal issues. For large-scale operations, those are operations like Troy and Aurora, we have a scale that relates to the price of gold. So that if we have gold prices above 1,000 US dollars, the royalty rate is 8% of gross, and if it is less than 1,000 US dollars, then it scales down to 5%, and so it goes. At this point in time, we've been quite lucky for the year so far. The gold price has been holding between 1,200 plus 1,250. So that is very good for us at this point in time. And as a result of that, the mining sector is actually doing quite well. We have an income tax regime at 35%, and we allow depreciation at 20%, withholding tax at 6.25% of dividends. Well, that's where the accountants go and do the figures to determine whether they can support their investment or not. But from what I have seen, this has not necessarily been a deterrent to investment. Duty and tax concessions for equipment and materials during prospecting and mining, Mr. Probably spoke about that as sector-specific incentives. For bauxite, we have a royalty of 1.5% of gross, and for the smallest scales of mining, our royalty is 5% of gross. Diamond royalty is at 3% of gross. So this basically sets up a situation where the industry is quite prime for investment at the very primordial state of actually getting positions for tenure and mining. Generally speaking, Guyana is still very unexplored. We have established and documented processes and application for tenure. Our processes for all the tenure arrangements are ISO certified, so there should be no fear of being unable to follow your application through to the actual receipt of the permit. There are opportunities along the value chain for mining, and we have new and emerging subsectors evolving. Now, this is a part that I've found in conversations that have been very elusive, where investors come and they just see mining as getting tenure, going and dig a hole and try to extract gold or whatever. And I view that the sector needs to think out of the box a little bit and identify how it can leverage with collaboration to move it forward in many ways. For example, if someone comes to explore, then that person may not have to, on their own, go and do the exploration, go through the exploration cycle. There are opportunities where you can create those kinds of companies that can consult and do those things. There are companies who are right now trying to leverage themselves into a situation as they already have equipment in bush and in the back dam, that they're recognizing that because our regulatory responsibilities is also for environment and we're requiring reclamation and so on, those companies are now putting their hands up and saying, hey, I can get into reclamation work, and that is something that can generate income. So that I'm getting not just the revenue and income from mining, which is not always even, but I can also get some income and revenue from environmental remediation or road construction and things like that. And even as we talk about exploration and mapping, with the advent of drones and other aerial types of responses, I believe that there is an opportunity for those who are minded to go in the technology direction to get into the sector and find those connections. And I've even put tourism there because I'm of the view that the tourism that is occurring right now is being supported by the mining sector simply because most of the destinations in the interior are destinations that have been created out of mining and forestry in particular. So I think there's opportunity there. I just want to say a little bit, because that's essentially the end of my slides. I just want to say a little bit about our outreaches and our collaborations. We have had a very strong relationship at different levels with the private sector. And I believe that those kinds of relationships need to be fostered some more. The government itself, while it can have an interest, if it so chooses, in doing mining, that has not been the policy directive for some time. And it is my opinion that private sector innovations, business acumen, and the ability to attract and bring finances to the sector could be a way in which we can move this issue along. So I'm not going to go beyond my 10 minutes. You may know that you may notice that I haven't spoken anything about oil, and that's deliberate because from the point of view of the GGMC, it is our understanding that the oil sector will be removed from the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. So, but if questions come up on that, I can answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning. Well, good day, actually. I have more than 5 slides, but hopefully I can still keep it to the 10 minutes allotted for the presentations. It's a pleasure for GFC to be invited to present at this very important meeting because it gives us an opportunity to speak about what really is very important for Guyana and the topic that we've seen transcend across political administrations and across generations of people, and that is our forest. We've seen that over the last 4 decades, we've maintained a very low rate of deforestation that has not exceeded to date 0.1%. And that is exemplary because it shows that across our various land classes, and we have categorized here state forest area, which is the area that is managed by the Guyana Forestry Commission. We have Amerindian lands, which are owned by indigenous peoples. We have state lands, which are managed by the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, and we have protected areas, which are managed by the Protected Areas Commission. And over the past 4 decades at least, we see that the total area of forest of 18.4 million hectares really have not changed much. And that really is exemplary for our continued stewardship of our forest resources. I have a slide here that shows the area of allocation. So this is a snapshot of what the forest sector is about. A total of 12.5 million hectares are under the stewardship of the GFC. And to date, we have allocations of 4.4 million hectares in forest concessions. So that means close to 35% of the total state forest is allocated. which means that the remainder percentage is unallocated. So these areas are not under concession management. And this is a bit different from about 2 years ago when about 55% of this total state forest was allocated. Over the past 2 years, close to 2.2 million hectares have come back to the state for various reasons. The forest sector at a glance, we are about 12.5 million hectares in terms of size. Our sustainable annual harvest rate in terms of cubic meters is 1.3 million cubic meters. The actual harvest rate, however, is only about a third of that. So we are only harvesting about a third of what the forest really can sustain, given sustainable forest management principles. So we pale in comparison to the mining sector when we hear about exceeding 600 million US dollars in export value. The forest sector is smaller, so we're about 40 million annually in terms of US dollars, and we contribute about 3% directly to gross domestic product. And we employ about 20,000 persons across the areas of the sector. Within the forest sector, we are guided by modern pieces of legislation. The Forest Act, which was approved in 2009, was through unanimous support by Parliament, so both sides of the House support the Forest Act coming into being, and that was passed in 2009. We also have the Sister Act, which is the Guyana Forestry Commission Act, along with policies and guidelines. So across the forest sector, we can be confident that the legislative mandate of the sector is guided by very modern clauses within the Act itself. The administrative structure, we fall under the Ministry of Natural Resources, and we are governed by a board of directors. Across the forest sector, we have some key pillars in terms of our programmatic interventions. We have a very robust monitoring exercise whereby we insert ourselves across the transportation network of Guyana. The forestry produce, unlike gold, is a bit easier to manage because like gold, you can't put it in your pocket and go to another destination. It's difficult to do that with forest products, so it makes our monitoring of the forestry activities a lot easier. So we insert ourselves across the road network, whereby road and river network, and we're able to have 39 stations across the country that are manned by close to 250 of our forestry staff. We're also able, you will see in the top diagram, a log tracking system being demonstrated, whereby for every removed piece of the produce, we have a unique two-dimensional barcode, which is tracked, that is of an identification unique to each operator and unique to each produce. We are currently in discussion with the European Union, so this will, I presume, add to the number of bilateral agreements we have from Owen's presentation. We are just about, by end of this year, going to conclude an initial negotiations with the European Union on a voluntary partnership agreement, which essentially is a trade agreement for forest produce to enable forest produce from Guyana entering into the EU to take the Green Line. So there will be an easier route to gain access into the EU. We also have a very strong system of forest management, which means that, like in the mining sector, where there is prospecting before operators go to extract, in the forest sector as well, there is a very detailed structure of planning and management. Two of the key documents we have outlining these structures are the annual operational plan and forest management plan. So everything that is taken out must be pre-approved by the GFC, and this allows for us to be able to manage what happens at the level of extraction. We also have a very robust planning and policy framework, and we support close to 70 community associations. What we saw in the early 1990s was, with the closure of a lot of the bauxite operations, specifically in Region 10, there was a fallout in terms of economic livelihood activities for communities. So the forest sector, of course, by its very physical proximity to some of those regions, took advantage of that fact, and we were able to issue out forest lands. But this time, differently than before, we didn't do it to individual holders or persons, but we issued them out to community groups. So for example, the Linden community has close to 15 concessions. The Aichuni community has close to 12. The Kokwani community has a number of them as well. and we have these replicated throughout the country. And by doing so, we enable for community groups to collectively manage and utilize the forest resources for the benefit of that community and not for individual persons only. One of the hallmark features of the forest sector has been the work that has commenced under the stewardship of former President Jack Leo when he started work on the low carbon development strategy, and that we saw continuing under the current administration through the visionary approach of President Granger and the Green State Development Strategy. This is encompassed under an umbrella of program called Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation. And this basically embodies one of the key bilateral cooperations we have on forest and climate in Guyana, which is between the government of Guyana and the Kingdom of Norway. That has been a hallmark agreement which saw Guyana being eligible to receive close to $250 million for ensuring that the environmental stewardship of the forest resource remain at a very high level. And the work we've done at GFC has been to support this venture, which means that our role, and to simplify it in a sense, has been to report every year on the state of forest. So we report how much forest we have at the start of a period and how much forest we have at the end of a period. And we deliver these reports to the government of Norway. And by doing so, the government of Norway is then able to release payments to Guyana to say, yes, you have maintained deforestation rates at a level agreed to, and here is your disbursement. So that is a simplified version of how that works, but it has been a very visionary bilateral cooperation, and it is very advantageous to pump resources into areas previously which were under-resourced. As a product sector, we export to many destinations. Our key destinations are in Europe, the Caribbean, and North America. And we have been, if we look at 2016, we've exported the majority of our forest products to the European and the Caribbean region. About $18 million US in terms of sawnwood export, which is our main product, our main forest product. In terms of our investment matrix, there are many opportunities available in the forest sector. We have opportunities in logging, in secondary processing, in downstream processing, and the full gamut of trade and other support. There are opportunities in the harvesting sector. So we have, as I mentioned, only 35% of the state forest is allocated currently. So the majority of forest resources are as yet unallocated. Whether these will be available for harvesting activities is something that will have to be guided by our ministry and our strategic plan. But currently, there is a lot of opportunity available for harvesting operations. I show an example of a typical forest harvest operation to give you a sense of the strong environmental standards which are applied at the level of forestry activities. This is a local operator, Variety Woods and Greenheart Limited, operating in Charabaru, and this is an example of their base camp. We also have some of the products produced by Variety Woods that go to export destinations, and this is an untapped market. We are only taking advantage of only about 20% of the Caribbean market right now for these products. So about 80% still we have that we can take advantage of and continue to export. These are a few examples of our other forest products. These are added value manufactured products such as veneer and plywood. And we also have the end-use applications of these products shown. In addition to forest products, we have a number of networking services like provision of roading support, building of roading infrastructure, networking infrastructure, as well as trade and export and shipping support that really are vital to keeping the forest sector alive, which really can see a lot more investment and a lot more interest in terms of advancing the work that has been done. My other colleagues spoke about ecotourism, but we have such a vibrant amount of potential, I believe, in terms of tapping into untapped ecotourism potential. We have on the left a photograph of Rockstone, so that is one of the communities that has actually been advancing its work on ecotourism. And we have to the right what is a fairly untapped destination right now, that is the Canister Falls. And that falls within the Variety Woods and Greenheart Limited concession, and it's at the mouth of the Essequibo River. As yet, there has not been a significant amount of development across many of the ecotourism sites in Guyana. But we do have a number of exemplary cases that give motivation for this to continue on, and I'm sure we'll hear some of this from other speakers. In addition to services in timber, we also have non-timber forest products that offer good possibility for expanding export markets as well. And this is one of the new and emerging areas that hopefully we can continue to tap into. From the end-use application, some of this really is unknown when we tell potential investors that we are in a number of countries in terms of our timber exports. We have a number of civil engineering end-use applications in the UK. We have crane mats being used in a number of European destinations. We have marine applications, for example, in New Haven and Broomhill Sands. We have a number of applications in the oil and gas sector in overseas destinations. And we also have infrastructure support in some of the European and North American destinations. So we're already out there, but we're only attracting about 5% of where we could be. So there is significant potential to really develop further. In terms of emerging sectors, I mentioned some of these earlier, but there are also other areas like agroforestry, clean energy in terms of finding a way to use wood waste to be able to perhaps provide a source of energy for forestry activities or other activities. And there is a tremendous amount of work that can be done in terms of research and development. In doing so, we work with Go Invest, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Ministry of Business, and our sister agency at the sector level, including the Private Sector Commission and the Forest Products Association. I'll close by presenting this slide and by sharing with you our view as to what really makes Guyana very attractive as a source for investment in the forest sector. So I'll remind you that there is strong political support for forestry in the work we've done in the forest sector. As I mentioned, in 2009, through the intervention of the Low Carbon Development Strategy and the work we've done in terms of the bilateral agreement with the government of Norway, we've been able to be the trendsetter in what it means to have strong forest management and good environmental stewardship. We've seen this continue through the Green State Development Strategy work and the work that has been done under the Protected Area System. Some of these other areas were mentioned by my colleagues in terms of language and in terms of our geographic proximity. But of course, I think what sets us aside from every other country is that we have over generations exemplified what it means to be good stewards of the forest. And I think that is a takeaway message that we leave with investors. That when you come to invest in Guyana, it really is with a confidence that you're coming to a destination where you will have no regrets and where there is such a significant potential and possibility for returns on the value that you would bring. Thank you.
That I have 10 minutes, and I promise not to do what the government just did. They hijack all the time. And this is why you need a strong private sector to keep the government foot to the fire. The chairman of the Private Sector Commission, because he wanted to have lunch, Eddie Boyer, asked me to do the presentation. And I just quickly want to give an overview of the Private Sector Commission of Guyana. There are many of our brothers and sisters in the diaspora that do not understand the role that the private sector and the Private Sector Commission plays in Guyana today, because when a lot of you left Guyana, there was no private sector. When a lot of you left Guyana, the economy, 95% of the economy was controlled by the state. With the advent of Desmond Hoyt ascent to power, Desmond Hoyt started the rebuilding of the private sector, which continued over the last 25 years. But because there was no private sector, in 1991, the leaders of private sector organizations got together to form the Private Sector Commission. 150 years ago, when when the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce was formed, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce was the place where business was done in Guyana. And they never expanded themselves to become the Chamber of Commerce of Guyana. As a result, we've had the Chamber of Commerce of Berbice, of Bartica, of Linden, of the Essequibo that developed. As well as Guyana was developing over the years, you had the subsectors. You had the Tourism and Hospitality Association, the Forest Producers Association, the Aircraft Owners Association, and so on. Today we have 25 such organizations in Guyana, and those organizations, the leaders of those organizations got together in 1992 and sat around the table and formed the Private Sector Commission. And so a lot of people, a lot of times, do not understand the structure of the Private Sector Commission, and that the Private Sector Commission speaks on behalf of the private sector across Guyana, starting from as far east of the Quarantine, to Latam on the Brazilian border, to the Essequibo Coast, Bartica and Linden, and another 25 private sector organizations. The private sector remains strong because we are committed and determined not to allow government alone to occupy the management space of our country and our economy. And so the private sector have committed itself over the last 25 years to work in partnership with the government, in good partnership, but not a partnership that subsumes the private sector, because we will tell the government when we don't agree with them. Like, for example, I just heard Go Invest said that incentives will only be given to hotels with 30 rooms. That was never the case. The private sector never agreed to that with government. And that is a matter we will raise with Go Invest and the minister, because that excludes small businesses. And this is a country that talks about promoting small businesses, and that is a policy that will marginalize small businesses. And we also don't want discretion on incentives for facilities in the hinterland. We don't want you to use your discretion. We want you to put it in some kind of policy, so that when you change, the next person don't come and decide he wants a different incentive to be given to the private sector. So the private sector work in collaboration with government, and we insert ourselves in discussion of policies. I want to say to you, we are very committed to the diaspora. We want to work with you. We understand that some of the greatest brains and assets of Guyana is out there, and we want you to come and invest. You have equal investment opportunity and conditions like us in the private sector here in Guyana, like any other foreign investor coming to Guyana. We appreciate the remittance you send to your families, and that is your moral obligation. We are more interested in the people who come here and give back to the church, and give back to schools and charity, medical missions that come to Guyana. Come and help Guyana. Helping your families is a good gesture, but more particularly we want to see you come back and put your money where your mouth is, and join us in the local private sector in helping to develop Guyana. And help us to do this, help us to share our view that the number one challenge facing Guyana today is the creation of jobs. Creation of jobs for our young people. Government don't create jobs. Government creates the enabling environment to create those jobs. Government help foster and enhance investor confidence. And anytime government do anything to frighten the private sector, anytime government overtax the private sector, they are not creating the incentives to foster and enhance investor confidence. So we need our brothers and sisters in the diaspora to come back and work with us. The Private Sector Commission, and I have 5 more minutes, Dr. Griffith. Dr. Griffith, I'll accept your 2 minutes. I want to say to you that the Private Sector Commission The chairman just informed me today that the private sector is meeting with a group from this conference tomorrow, and the private sector want to say to you, people coming back home from the diaspora, contact the private sector, come to us as well, and we will help to insert you. We will help to insert you in the business environment of Guyana. You don't necessarily need to run to government for everything. Guyana, over the years, have evolved where so long as you follow the systems, you don't need to run to government for everything. What you need is friends in the formal private sector. Join your chambers of commerce in the geographic areas in which you'll do business. Join the private sector organizations in the subsector in which you'll do the business. And those organizations will get together and put a strong private sector voice and lobby to the government to ensure that your business is facilitated without favor or fear. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to again say to you that the Private Sector Commission of Guyana is strong, it is fearless, and it will tell the government when we don't agree with them. Right now, the private sector, for example, is furious. We are furious about our national security and public safety that we are facing as the private sector in Guyana. And the chairman of the Private Sector Commission just wrote a very strong letter to President Granger last night, expressing those concerns. We are not rude, we are not reckless, but maintaining an enabling environment for investor confidence is something we will work with and work with you every day. Thank you very much.
Applause for the Private Sector Commission. Go invest, forestry, and gold, folks. Given the time of hour and the fact that our keynote speaker has arrived, let's do the following. We'll take from this side 2 questions or comments, from this side 2 questions or comments, and then I'll ask the panelists to respond as they see fit as a final round. After which, I'll invite the panelists to join us for lunch, and then we'll start the luncheon session. So the portable mic is available. Who has the portable mic? First question here, or comment? Portable mic, you have to walk a little faster.
Mr. Vice Chancellor, the honored panelists, this is just a very brief comment. I think I'm not going to speak on behalf of other people, I'll just speak on behalf of myself. I came home to seek a certain amount of, to talk about collaboration, to talk about a certain amount of quietude, and in 2 different sessions, I personally feel I'm hearing too much dissension. I'm hearing division. I heard it in one session yesterday. I'm hearing it today. It jars a little bit, I think should really obviously be about problem solving, a little less or much less of the kind of divisiveness, private sector versus government. As far as I recall, the name of this country is the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And it was always supposed to be a balance among the private sector, government, and cooperatives. I'm just not comfortable hearing about this or that entity versus another. That is not the reason why I traveled to Guyana.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else on this side? All right, Chet, and then we'll go over the side to Colin.
Hello. I have a question for Mr. Borwin. I know some people who are interested in pig rearing, pig farming, and my understanding, one of the challenges is that we do not have an international standard abattoir in Guyana. Are you aware of any project or any plans to, with or without the government's assistance or with the private sector, to have such an abattoir built in Guyana? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's go here to Colin and then all the way to the back.
Hi, good afternoon. My question may straddle Mr. Dennison and the young lady from forestry. I am very much concerned about the deal which we made with Norway. And it seems to look like Norway is doing us a favor. Norway is not. Norway wants to drill in the Iceland, and because of the regime in terms of carbon, Norway is required to buy renewable energy certificates. They came to Guyana and they bought our forests because it's a sink for carbon, and we are playing games with Norway. We can sell this on the UN market and probably make more money. Now let's put it on. If Exxon is drilling, and all those companies out there are drilling out there, they will be required by the Paris Agreement, etc., to have renewable energy certificates. Are we marketing it at the moment and trying to get our best bang for our forests in Guyana so that we can reinvest that money? Or we can take right now from Exxon, probably in advance on their exploration, so we can plug it into development. And the second aspect, if Mr. Benson can tell us about our copper reserves.
Great. We'll take a final question or comment. I think it's from Wayne in the back. And then we'll begin with Mr. Verwey and the other panelists. Any responses you want to provide?
Yes, to go invest. Direct investment is a major challenge facing developing countries, and in particular, Guyana. You have standard incentives that you outlined earlier. My question to you is, what policies are in place to incentivize the diaspora to invest more in Guyana?
Thank you. So we begin with a round of responses from the panel.
First item that was raised about the abattoir, I think government of Guyana has recognized that, and the Livestock Development Association is looking into the issue. An abattoir is on schedule for completion in Region 9 within the next 12 months. I know that has been agreed to. The Livestock Development Association, Ministry of Agriculture, and Go Invest have visited Brazil within the last 8 to 9 weeks, where we looked at abattoirs operations, and one of the largest abattoirs in the Americas region that is being built right in Bovista. And I think the slaughtering rate of that abattoir is something like 1 cow every 30 seconds. So they have looked at the whole thing. However, the economics of it is being worked out. The funding arrangement and the location aspect of it is being discussed. I know it's currently in discussion as to the location of it. With respect to the specifics on pigs, there are some challenges there that they have to look into. As you know, this is not one of the large pork consuming nations, and therefore the demand is more for other products. But the abattoir aspect of what your question is being looked into, and in particular the pigs, that industry. As to the question on the policies for the diaspora, a diaspora engagement policy and strategy has been drafted. I think it's in the second round of discussions among cabinet ministers. A couple of weeks ago, it was noted that the item had its first round of, the first draft was discussed. That document, once finalized, should be going to Cabinet for a decision. And I'm assuming that will happen before the end of this year. Within that document, the relevant policies and strategies will be identified. Thanks.
Thanks very much to the gentleman who asked a question about the Guyana-Norway Agreement. I think one of the things that we have to remember about the Guyana-Norway Agreement is that it's different from every other kind of climate agreement that we see on carbon trading markets. The Guyana-Norway Agreement embodies really a payment for service that Guyana is providing. So it's not for emissions reductions or trying to reverse perhaps poor environmental practices of the past, but it's based on avoided deforestation. So in a sense, it is paying us to continue doing what we're doing. So the example that was given about trading on carbon markets, that would be for an entirely different animal altogether, which would be for emissions reductions, which really is what the Paris Agreement speaks to, which is to find a way to reverse poor practices and to reverse emissions that would have been generated from maybe the transportation sector, the aviation sector, the mining sector, and the forest sector. In Guyana, our rate of deforestation is so low, it is less than 0.1%. So that means that we don't fall in the basket of countries that want to reduce emissions. Instead, we fall in the basket of countries that are seeking to avoid emissions. And that is an important distinction when we speak about the carbon trading schemes like the European trading scheme and the other trading schemes that we have out there and the Guyana-Norway model. I'll just add as well that in the early days of discussion when the agreement was entered into, Norway really could have collaborated with any country. They collaborated with Indonesia, they collaborated with Brazil, but Guyana was able to put forward a case not to sell the forest resources, but to find a way where we're paid for services provided. So they are buying our carbon sequestration services and we are selling that service, like any other payment for service scheme. So there isn't this concept of we've given away our forest or Norway is dictating. I mean, if I'm to close by just sharing two examples of what came from the Norway Agreement. Our entry now in discussions on EITI, which is the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and the work of the EU FLECT, which is the European Union Forest Law Enforcement Governance and Trade Program, which are two pillars of strong extractive industry governance examples and models, came from our joint agreement with Norway. So that really shows that through the agreement, not only do we get paid for service, but there's some strong governance model, transparency model, anti-corruption model that actually come from those commitments we've made. So it works both ways in ensuring that there is payment, but we're also building up governance structures to ensure that safeguards are put in place. So I think really it's something that we keep in mind when we maybe try to draw a circle around all carbon trading schemes. They really are not quite the same as those that we refer to in terms of the carbon market and the European trading scheme.
GGMC. We have people on the Guyana Power and Light Board and so on. So the private sector work in good faith with government. But never again are we going to allow the private sector to become quiet to the extent that we end up with government once again controlling 95% of the economy. And this has got nothing to do with conflict, it's got everything to do with working as equal partners in our national development. Thank you.
Just a comment on Red Plus. The mining sector recognizes that it has to contribute to the concept of REPD Plus. And so in our protocols, we attempt wherever we can to promote that, reduce and avoid deforestation and reclamation to the extent possible. In relation to the question about copper, I don't want you to run away with the notion that we can develop a copper mine right now. Copper is known to be present as part of the metallurgy in the mineralized corridors of Guyana. At this point, it is mainly represented in our geochemical analysis. We do these broad, basin-wide geological and geochemical surveys that test for tertiary mineral presence in sediments. And anomalies of copper do show up, but it's quite a ways away from getting to the point where it is a mine. What those anomalous areas indicate, if a company is so minded, is it can now advance by applying, for example, permit for geological and geophysical surveys to specifically explore for copper as an example. So it's not a case where we can go right now and just look at copper as a case through with uranium or with the other platinum metals that I have put up there as resources that are available for us to explore. The idea for GGMC is that we would like to move and diversify our operations away from just gold and diamonds. And this is where our exploration activities are expected to guide those who are minded to come and advance.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the team of this session, Doing Business in Guyana, I would like to thank you for the opportunity for each one of us in the presentations we made. Thanks to the comments and the question, and I would like to encourage you to enjoy your lunch and look forward to the next presentation. Thanks.
One of the commitments